Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Autodesk Virtual Academy, brought to you guys by KETIV Technologies. I'm Nigel Mbayak, your host for today and every other day. Nothing changed
Nothing new.
here. Today I'm joined by Alex Alvarez, one of the engineers on our team. Good morning, Alex. How's it going?
Good morning. Pretty good. Not too bad so far.
Awesome. I'm standing because Alex is so tall. He's actually sitting in a chair. Unbelievable. But Alex is one of the gentlemen on our engineering team who works primarily on customer projects. But Alex also happens to be one of the people at the company who specialize in a lot of the manufacturing tools themselves, meaning things like HSM, things like PowerMill, FeatureCam, all of those products. And they're called advanced manufacturing products. So if you hear that every once in a while, I'm sure Alex will talk about it here in a little bit. That's what we mean, and that's who to go to. So if you got any questions, definitely go to Alex. Today we're going to be going over some of the features in PowerMill itself, how that works, what are the advantages of using it over other things, and some general knowledge as to the tool. We're fully certified in this tool and a couple of the other advanced manufacturing tools as well. So I don't think there's anyone better on our team to talk about PowerMill than our good friend here, Alex. Do you have anything to add before we get started?
No. I mean, just excited to show you guys, a little bit more advanced technology that Autodesk has to offer. So just looking forward, to demonstrating this. And again, if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask away, and we'll do the best to answer them as we're going along.
Sounds good. All right, Alex, take it away.
Awesome. All right. So like Nigel mentioned, we are certified in these advanced manufacturing portfolios, right? So some of the more advanced manufacturing tools that Autodesk has to offer. So with that, a lot of our customers are asking, well, how do we know what the right tool is going to be for us? As you guys know, Autodesk has a decent amount of manufacturing tools, specifically on the CAM side. So one of the highlights or one of the objectives for this webinar is going to be to pinpoint, okay, well, where do I fall? What software can I use? And what's going to really give me the best ROI for our business, right? So again, highlight some of the more advanced manufacturing tools that Autodesk has to offer, see where each tool and where each product overlaps and where they specialize in, as well as also focus on PowerMill, which is, for those of you that don't know, one of the more higher end CAM softwares that Autodesk has to offer.
Yep, and just to clarify too, is a lot of what we talk about in AVA is stuff that's included in the product design and manufacturing collection. Just a note, PowerMill is not one of those products, so it is separate from your regular Inventor AutoCAD kind of grouping of products. So just I figured that question's going to come through anyways. Answer it right now.
Yeah, no, absolutely, you're absolutely right. So PowerMill is, it's standalone product. And again, well, how do you know what the right CAM package is, right? Do I use something from the, from the product design and manufacturing collection, or do I really have to go above and beyond and get something that's a little bit more higher on the higher end side? Well, some of the considerations or some of the things that you have to take into consideration is, well, what kind of parts are you guys manufacturing? Are they complicated parts? Are they, is it going to be a large production runs? Are you working in aerospace, maybe the tooling industry, right? You're working with molds, or are you just, working on one-off parts with maybe some positional, a little bit of simultaneous? That all really has to play a key role. So if you're on the, if you're working on aerospace parts that are quite complicated, and you need some of the, some of the more advanced tool paths where you really need to finite control the tool path, or maybe you need to control certain points, then that's where something like PowerMill is going to come into play. Right? You also have to take into consideration the machines that you have. Well, not only the machines that you currently have, but kind of look a little bit outside the box, into the future a little bit there, and see what machines can you or do you see yourselves using or possibly buying in the future. I know oftentimes, a lot of customers, they spend, on software, they spend on training for something that's, on the lower end side of the CAM spectrum. In 2-3 years, they kind of outgrow that, and they they start buying some of these higher end CNC machines. Well, guess what? Some of the lower end CAM software isn't going to really give you that ROI on those machines. So again, that's going to play a pretty key role, and that's something that you do have to take into consideration as you're as you're deciding what the correct CAM package is going to be for you guys. And so here we have this chart, again, pretty self-explanatory here, but I'll just kind of run through a few things. So again, Autodesk Fusion 360 kind of falls into the same spectrum as Inventor CAM. So we do have Fusion 360 here, but again, Inventor CAM and Fusion 360, they kind of both share the same CAM, the CAM kernel there. So that's going to be an integrated CAD CAM software, right? So for those of you guys that are aware, Fusion 360 is kind of just a platform for your everyday designer and engineer. It has everything from CAD, simulation, rendering, and CAM as well. So if that's something that you guys need or are looking for, then that's going to be something that that might suit you guys best. You can also do 2.5 milling, 3-axis, all the way up to multi-axis milling. But again, you only have a few capabilities in terms of multi-axis milling, right? So you don't have the full finite control. You only have 3 or 4 different toolpaths that can give you that simultaneous toolpath. But again, you don't have the that true control over the toolpath as you're programming it. Then you start jumping into feature cam, right? So again, you can do the same thing as Fusion 360, but again, it is a standalone software. It comes by itself, different tiers as well, and again, you can do some multi-axis milling. And then you have PowerMill, right, where that kind of has it all. It has everything from tool axis editing to toolpath editing. You can control robots if you guys are doing a lot of light top machining and have maybe some sort of automation incorporated into your workflow. That's something that you might also want to look into. This is more on the multitasking capabilities, right? So mainly mill turns, multi-spindle turning, multi-turret turning, right? So Swiss machining. If you fall in any of those spectrums, then Feature Cam is going to be the CAM software that you might want to take a look at, right? So you can kind of see here what capabilities it has. And then PowerMill, you can see that it has some basic 2-axis turning. But again, it doesn't really focus. That's not going to be its powerhouse, if you will. We have probing, so I added that little shaded part in there. It wasn't included in this chart, but Autodesk PowerMill does have the surface inspection, so you can do probing, and you can get probing out of the software, which is why I kind of shaded it in that color there. Again, if you guys have any questions on this, or you guys kind of want to go a little bit more into detail as to, okay, well, I saw the chart, I'm still not sure exactly where we fall in this, in this spectrum, reach out to us. We will be gladly to, figure out exactly what kind of workflows you guys are doing, what kind of parts, what kind of machines you guys have, and we'll kind of walk you guys to do some recommendations on what we see there. So like I mentioned, today we are going to be focusing on Autodesk PowerMill. A little bit about Autodesk PowerMill, right? So if you guys truly want that, that increased precision, or you want that confidence in, in programming some of these parts, well, this is something that you're going to be looking into. Again, the software gives you tons of control and flexibility as you're programming, and it makes it quite easy, right? So a lot of the stigma with some of these higher end CAM tools is that, okay, well, yeah, it's going to give me all this control and all this flexibility, but it's also going to take me a year or 2 years to master. And hopefully after today's demo, you guys can see that it's not really going to take that long, or the learning curve isn't going to be as bad as you expect. Some of the things that it offers, so again, high-speed machining, that's something that recently got added to the software, I believe, within the last 2 years. Traditionally, again, it had its traditional toolpath, some of the more traditional toolpaths. But again, with Autodesk, what they like to do is they like to incorporate certain things from multiple softwares into each of their individual softwares, right? So what I mean by that is, for those of you Fusion 360 users, you might notice that there's some more advanced functionality, and you'll see that some of that advanced functionality actually comes from Autodesk PowerMill, and vice versa, right? So some of the high-speed machining toolpaths actually come from the Inventor HSM or Inventor CAM kernel. That they've kind of integrated into PowerMill. So in my opinion, I think that's pretty neat, right? So they're not just keeping one software be one software, they're kind of giving small crumbs into some of the other CAM packages that they have available. So if you want to do 3+2 machining, you can do that here. If you want to control some of the robotics, you can also, program a full robotic arm if you want. There's mill turn, full 5-axis capabilities, so it kind of has it all here, right? So again, this is why it's the high-end cam package, because again, it does have the ability to control most of your higher end functions that you would expect out of a CAM software. So with that being said, let's go through a quick demo. Again, I kind of just want to highlight a few things that the software offers and that I feel a lot of people would benefit from. So let's jump into the software just to get a feel for what it looks like. How do you navigate through some of these components, and hopefully you guys can get a better insight into the software. Okay, so there's a few things that I do want to showcase in this demo, right? So one of them, and it's probably going to be the most important one, is how powerful the 5-axis strategies truly are, right? And really how easy it is to navigate some of these toolpaths as well. Also show the kind of how does the software provide the user that safety, right? That kind of gives you a safety net when you're programming, and really ensures that you're not going to get into some crazy accidents, or maybe gouge part, or maybe have some unexpected movements. Again, we have this part kind of sitting in the table. We have the machine head here, and that's one of the things with PowerMill, right? Is that you can actually bring in or import your machine data into the actual software and really see exactly what the machine is going to be doing. So with other CAM softwares, you get some sort of simulation, but again, it's not giving you that true simulation unless you're using some sort of a third-party software. Here, the software has it built in. So again, if you want to do collision checking, if you want to verify that the machine head isn't going to collide into the table or isn't going to collide into the part, that's something that you can do inside of this software. So here again, just kind of walking through the software, we have the tool ribbon. Again, this is where most of the action is going to take place. This is where you control your tools. You can create your own tools, select from a database that's already kind of pre-installed. You can edit some of the toolpaths in here, create your features. So we do have feature toolpaths or feature recognition toolpaths. So you do have the option to to kind of select features ahead of time, and then add toolpaths to a part based on features. You have your Explorer over here that kind of groups everything by by type. So your machine tools, your NC programs, your setups. So this is actually something new as well. Setups, I think within I want to say PowerMill 2019 got introduced, and again, it just behaves the same way that that you would expect a typical setup to behave, right? So you create your setup, you add toolpaths, and all of that information is essentially going to fall under that specific setup that you created. You don't have to create a setup, so that's one of the key differences that I've noticed, is that you can kind of go about it without creating a setup. But if you are going to require multiple setups, it is always best practice to obviously just have your individual setups here created. So you have your toolpaths, your tools. Again, typically in this software, you want to create your tools ahead of time before adding toolpath. So there is a workflow, and again, this is going to be mostly just a high-level overview. But in the upcoming sessions, within the next month or 2 months, we will start diving a little bit deeper into the software and walking through what it looks like to program some of these parts. So you also have boundaries, patterns, right? So you guys get the gist here. It's essentially just going to hold all of the information that's going to require you to program the part. And then the last slide here, or the last section that I want to pinpoint, is going to be your view section. So this is where you control the shading. If you want to see multicolor on your part, or if you just want to see it essentially just one color, right? So this is where you essentially just control all of those different actions. All right, so let's take a look at some of the toolpaths just so that we can see what's in there, right? So by selecting toolpaths, notice that now you essentially have a decent amount of different toolpaths that you can select, right? So a lot of softwares, they have a limited or kind of a small range that you can work with. But in here, again, you have different roughing strategies, right? Or 3D area clearance. You have specific toolpaths, right? If you want to do porting toolpaths, splits toolpaths, it really just has it all, right? So again, one of the benefits of using this higher end software is that you're not limited to just specific toolpaths. You can get kind of you kind of have the entire spectrum here of different toolpaths that you can select. And here I already have a few toolpaths kind of pre-programmed, right? So we have our traditional roughing strategy. And again, you can take a look at it. Typical strategy, right? It kind of just takes the offset of the model, and then it starts controlling it based on your step downs here, which is fine, right? But again, if we take a look at how long this toolpath takes, right? So it's around the 2-hour mark. So not too bad. Again, this is a decent sized part, but again, we went back to having some of the high-speed machining toolpaths. And if we take a look at the adaptive instead, right? So a little bit different toolpath. And again, if we take a look at the settings, just so we can see what goes on behind the scenes here, right? So here's our adaptive toolpath. And again, you can control a decent amount of settings here, right? So instead of having just 4 or 5 tabs, now you actually have a lot of information that you guys can start controlling in here, right? So again, looking through some of these, if you want to do step cutting, wall finishing, right? Where if you have a specific start and end point for the toolpath, you can start defining some of those variables as well, and automatic verification, right? So very similar to the if you guys are coming from Inventor Camp, so the tool and shank checkbox that you guys see there, right? So if you want to verify that the toolpath isn't going to collide, this is one of the automatic verifications that you can just incorporate into the toolpath. Right. So again, and inside of the software, it's called vortex milling. Again, it's got the same attributes as the adaptive strategy, right? So it's going to look very familiar to that toolpath. But anyways, if we take a look at the toolpath, which is what really matters here, right? So from 2 hours, we essentially just cut it down to 1 hour now, right? So again, for those of you that aren't familiar with adaptive strategies or haven't really heard too much about it, again, adaptive or the vortex strategy is going to allow you to use more of the flute length, right? So again, you don't have those high spikes, or you don't have those tight corners that you're machining. You have more of a fluid motion going through the part, machining and removing some of this material, right? So again, instead of a step over, now you're controlling this with essentially just an optimal load, and that's what's essentially going to be driving this specific toolpath. Right. So again, that's one of the things that I want to highlight, right? Is just the amount of toolpaths that you have to offer. You're not really going to be limited. You're going to have really a lot of flexibility in terms of adding roughing strategies and working with some finishing strategies here as well. Now, another thing that I want to highlight is the stock model. So we take a look at the stock model. We can go ahead and just calculate this. Right, so what the stock model is going to do is essentially every time you generate a toolpath, the software is automatically going to be creating this model on the back end, right? And it's going to be essentially visualizing or simulating where you left off in the toolpath, right? So it's going to simulate the exact part, the rest of the material remaining, so you can get all of that information and you can start kind of extracting all of that information. And again, it allows the user to just kind of better visualize where he needs to machine or where he needs to focus his efforts on in terms of adding toolpaths here. And so I'm just going to change the shading here. Right, and you can start seeing that after the rest machining, this is essentially what's going to be left behind. Right. And again, you can start adding to it. Here you can see that we have a few toolpaths that are essentially, added to it. And if we activate this and once again recalculate, it's going to show us a specific point in time, right? So again, you clearly see that there's, a couple things in here that we possibly don't want, right? We possibly don't want this machine yet. Maybe we want to add some more toolpaths here, maybe some more finishing strategies, or a kind of a better toolpath strategy around these larger rounds to get a nicer surface finish. But again, point being is that you always have that kind of visualization kind of telling you exactly what needs to be done prior to posting out to your machine. All right, so I'm going to turn this off. And again, now what we can do is we can say, okay, well, one of the things that I didn't like about this toolpath is that it machined this section here. And again, this is one of the, and probably one of my most favorite, or at least it's top 5. It's definitely up there. But something that we can do, and I'm going to just turn this off, is we can actually modify this toolpath without necessarily having to create boundaries or to create additional sketches. So what I mean by that is maybe I don't want some of this information, right? So I don't want that piece of toolpath there. I'm going to go ahead and right click. And so if you guys are familiar with PowerMill, this might look a little bit different, right? And I'll kind of explain that in a second here. But I'm just going to go ahead and delete that section there. Right click on this, delete toolpath segment. Right, and so now the actual tool, or the actual toolpath it took that into consideration, and it's automatically healing and taking that into consideration, right? Once you make those deletes. So again, that's huge, right? Because again, you don't have to spend time creating boundaries. You don't have to spend time maybe adding a few sketches here and there. You have that control. You have that flexibility to make those quick edits kind of on the fly there. So we have a right-click menu here, and again, this was provided to me by the Autodesk team. So this is custom here, but essentially what it does is you can, and that kind of highlights to how much automation can go into the software, but you can automate some of the menus here. In this case, we automated, or we customized the right-click menu, and I just customized it to use some of the more common functions that I use, right? So one of them being the delete selected toolpath segment. Maybe I want to change the background color, right? So maybe I want to just on the fly change it to white. And again, you can do that manually, but again, if you guys want to take a look at how long that takes, we would have to go to File, Options, Customize Color, right? View Background, and then this is where you would essentially select, where you want to change your colors here. So again, it takes a lot of picks and clicks. Again, and I haven't gone into the process of getting too deep into some of these macros. But I've seen people, or I've seen customers go as far as creating a setup macro, right? So you have your part, you specify exactly where you want that setup to take place, right? So you can specify, hey, I want the setup, or I want my coordinate system to be on the top of the model. And they have a macro that actually creates the entire setup. It creates the block for them, creates their safety planes, all just by clicking one single click. Right, so just one single click is all it takes essentially to do some of these options. And again, there's a lot of automation that can be involved, or that can be done inside of the software, and that's just something that we want to make you guys aware of. That if you guys hate to do redundant tasks, you can kind of bypass them by creating macros for them. Okay, so then that was the toolpath editing, and again, some of the things that we've covered so far, how to work with, how to work inside of the software, some of the toolpaths that they have to offer, the stock management, right? So again, surface finish is going to be paramount here. That's really gonna be what's gonna be driving most of the tooling engineers, right? Or the programmers, design engineers, manufacturing engineers, whoever's gonna be programming these parts. They're aiming to have the best surface finish, and again, by having a stock model here, that's always going to show them exactly what's going to happen. What still needs to get machined. That's going to be huge. That's going to be huge for them. Right? So now the next thing that I want to highlight, and we'll probably end there, is going to be the power of the 5-axis capabilities inside of the software. Right. So I'm going to just open up quick part here. All right, so slightly different part and slightly different machine, right? So again, one of the things that takes place when you buy PowerMill is that Autodesk gives you, so that with your purchase, they allow for a post and for a machine configuration. And this is one of the machines that that we're using just to test out. But again, it's always going to be beneficial to a lot of people having the actual machine data in here, because again, they can see exactly what takes place when they're going to be programming some of these toolpaths, right? So for instance, we have this toolpath, and I'm going to go ahead and simulate, or I can actually verify exactly before posting it out, right? So I'm going to go ahead and just say, hey, let's verify this toolpath. We want to verify that there's no collisions, and then see if anything comes up. Right, and right away we can see that we have a few exclamation points, right? So we have a few collisions. Not only does the software tell us that there's a collision, but it also gives us a nice description indicating, hey, there was a collision between the head and the model, right? Or hey, you got kind of close. You might want to check that out, right? So again, it's pretty nice. It's pretty intuitive. You can click on a actual issue, and it'll show you exactly where that location is at. So we can zoom in here. Again, notice that the tool holder, and that's one of the things, right? So the tool holder would have probably cleared in this area. But again, by having the actual head of the machine, we can see that it actually collides somewhere back here in the top of the model. Right, so that's huge. And again, you want to make sure that you have all of this machine data correctly. And again, the Autodesk team has worked with a decent amount of customers, so they have a broad range of machine data already available. So that's something that once you purchase the software, that's something that you can get along with your purchase there. Okay, so we have this issue. What are we going to do about it? I'm going to go ahead and close this out. And one of the again, top favorite things in the software is going to be the dynamic machine control. Right, so what does that mean? So if I go into the actual toolpath and I enable dynamic machine control, notice that these little handles come out. Right, so these little handles, so that's an indication that you can automatically just drag some of these informations, right? So I'm going to turn off the machine just for now. Okay, so what do we do here? Well, we want to select some regions, right? So we want to select the regions that are actually going to be troublesome in the actual toolpath. And we can either select it by a boundary that we had created, or we can actually create a boundary of our own. Right? So in this case, we're going to go ahead and create a polygon. I'm going to look at it from the top. And it's really just going to be as easy as selecting a couple of points here, right? So I'm going to go ahead and select this area here, because I know that that's where the head of the machine is going to be more likely to collide. I'm going to go ahead and say, I'm going to rotate this tool slightly here, grab this handle, and again, it gives you the angle, but again, I'm just going to play it by ear here and just say 40 degrees is good. I'm going to say save. I'm going to update selected region. Right, so we take a look at this toolpath from the beginning. We can see that it now got updated, right? And again, you don't need to create any work planes. You don't need to create any reference axes, any reference planes to get this to work. The software is automatically taking the the user inputs into consideration, and it's applying the motion, right, or some of the translation that you see here based off of a user input that you selected. So that's awesome, cool. But you can also, one of the nice features about it too is that you can actually interpolate two different segments of the toolpath, right? So, or two different rotations. So what I mean by that is we're actually going to activate the same one here. right? So it's this toolpath right below. Again, it's different feature here, but we're going to be going through the same exact workflow, right? So we're going to go ahead and enable dynamic machine control. We're going to go ahead and once again select the region, but in this time, we're not going to select it using a polygon. We're going to do it using a specific boundary, right? So I already have boundaries created here. I'm going to say region 1 is the first boundary. Rotate this around. Right, so we're going to update that. Well, that takes care of this portion, but what about this portion over here, right? We don't necessarily want to be machining in this orientation as we're coming along over here, along this wall here. So let's go ahead and change that to be region 2. Grab the handle. Save that, update selected region. Accept this. So now if we go ahead and we simulate this from start, a little too fast here, so I'm gonna slow down. But now you can see that the software automatically interpolated this toolpath here. Right, so again, no need to create any of the reference planes, no need to create any additional work features. It's automatically going to do that using dynamic machine control. And again, so that's what we wanted to highlight. We wanted to make sure that, you know, we kind of expose the stigma of having a high-end software be difficult to navigate. So again, throughout these next couple months, hopefully we can shed a little bit more light and go a little bit deeper into the software. But for this one, we just wanted to show essentially just a high-level overview, right, of what the software can do, some of the main features that we think are beneficial to customers, and hopefully expose some of those features to you guys. All right, so just to recap, again, we covered some of the different CAM softwares that Autodesk has to offer. Some of the you know, your traditional software, so something like Fusion 360 or Inventor CAM, went into some of the more advanced functionality of what Feature Cam can do and what Feature Cam can't do, as well as PowerMill, and then kind of highlighted what CAM software would be the right choice for you guys, right, for your business. So, and then finally just finished off with a little bit of overview of PowerMill. So again, like I said, this, you know, it might not be enough to give you guys a true idea of some of the more advanced functionality. And if it wasn't, feel free to, again, to reach out to us, ask some more questions. We're gladly here to help you guys out. And again, if there were any questions during the webinar, we can go ahead and answer them now.
Yeah, there's a couple, Alex. First one being, how does it work with, you know, file types? So there's a couple of questions here specifically for different file types.
Mm-hmm.
How does it interact with SolidWorks? How does it interact with Inventor? How does that, is it all the same pretty much?
Yeah, so you can work with a few different file types, right? So if I take a look at the option here, I'm going to just so I can show you guys what you can bring in, what you can't bring in, right? So these are all the different file types that you can work with. So you see your KETIV parts, you see your SolidWorks parts. So you do have a broad spectrum of different parts that you can work with. A recent update was the ability to export as a step file. So what that means, or as a Fusion file as well, I mean. So what that means is that you have, you know, your setup inside of PowerMill. What you can do is you can export a setup as a Fusion 360 file type, open it inside of Fusion 360, and you will have the ability to make changes inside of that software. So with the purchase of PowerMill, I believe it has to be PowerMill Ultimate. I have to double check, but you do get a seat of Fusion 360 as well. So again, that's kind of how these two would go hand in hand, right? So you have PowerMill, maybe you need to make a small modification to your fixture or your setup, or you would export that out as a Fusion 360 file, open it inside of Fusion 360, make your change, and then just re-import into the software that way.
Another question here, I guess we'll just reiterate this too, is how do you get PowerMill? If you just want to reiterate that really quickly, Alex.
Yeah, so you can reach out to us. Again, we're certified. We can certified resellers as well, so we can sell you guys a seat of PowerMill if you guys ever need any questions, or if you guys need just a demo just to see how PowerMill would interact with maybe with your workflow or your parts. We can gladly do that as well. So you can reach out to us, and we would be able to definitely help you guys out in that aspect.
Yep. Yeah. If you have any questions about how to get it and all this other stuff, yeah, feel free to reach out to us, and we'll get you pointed into the right direction. Awesome. Cool. Thanks everybody for joining us. I think that's everything we have for today. We will see you all next week. Thanks again, everyone. Bye.